Yes. Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is Deborah Peters, and welcome to the Deborah Peters Show. I have had a series of technical issues this morning and this afternoon, and so has my guest, Neil Donald Walsh. So I'm kind of thinking here that if he's not able to get on the show, then I may have to actually log off and restart the show. So bear with me. Not really sure why this is happening, but you know how it goes. You just got to roll with it and stay calm, stay cool, and stay collected. So while we're waiting for Neil, I am going to introduce the show and tell you why I started the Deborah Peters Show. And if he calls me and he's still struggling, I might have to put you on pause. So I started this show because I felt like after everything we have been through since 2020, by the way, this is my second show, that what the world really needs is information on how to increase consciousness within yourself and your life, the relationships that you have with yourself, with others, with your body, and of course, the relationship that you have with the world, with your environment, with even your own thought process. And so I feel like this is a really good time in history where we can have some very candid conversations about how you can free yourself from struggle and worry and strife, and most importantly, how you can find answers to situations in your life that have been holding you back, that have been challenging you, ways that you can tap into some greater wisdom without necessarily it being the belief systems, the programs of society, of other people. You know, we all have our own fears and doubts. We all have our perceptions of reality, and we all have a model of the world that we're living that is actually most likely an imprint from sometime between 0 and 7. And then we play this out in our lives, and we have these experiences that we just don't understand. And what feels like life is coming at us, you know, things are happening to us. We can't get a break, you know, we're down on our luck. And that installs these, because these significant emotional events install these patterns within us that can really keep us believing and keep us stuck that this is all my life can be. And so with that said, I can't even tell you how beyond thrilled I am and just utterly blessed to have my guest today, Neil Donald Walsh. It has been for me an extremely profound personal journey going through a spiritual awakening that is never a one-time deal and is continuing to this very day in my life. And so Neil is a 39 times author, which for me is like, you know, I bow down to that because I struggle right now to even finish one book. And his whole perspective here is the power of love and really opening our hearts and allowing ourselves to communicate with God and be guided toward the answers that we seek, which is a game changer in everyone's life. And the solution to life's most complex challenges can always be solved by love. And I feel like we're in this space and time right now in the world where we really need to emphasize this and we really need to focus on it. So, Neil, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad we both got past our tech issues. Thank you.
It's lovely to be here with you. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for the opportunity. You have to love even the tech issues.
I agree. I was thinking that. I'm like, okay, I was setting everything up and I accidentally shut my computer down. And then I'm like, oh dear, how long is this going to take to reboot? And then I got your call and you were saying, my computer's updating. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to step back from this and I'm just going to love this situation and it's going to be just fine. And here we are.
Yeah, it was really strange. I turned my computer on way ahead of time, 15, 20 minutes ahead of the program start, and I get a message on my screen, your computer is currently updating. And I thought, I didn't ask my computer to update. Who's asking my computer to
Oh my
update?
gosh.
But whatever, and then I get a note on my screen that says this will take approximately 15 minutes. And I'm like, what? I'm supposed to be.
Don't have that.
Yeah. So anyway, the best laid plans of mice and men aft go astray, and I've learned that in my life. I just turned 80 years old a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my gosh,
Celebrated.
happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, I celebrated my 80th birthday. I had a wonderful family party. All of my children were there, and their wives and the grandchildren. So there were like 45 people there. And it was a lovely, lovely event. But it's caused me to stop and think. Okay, I'm 80. What's next? What else is there left for me to do? But I'll tell you something, Deborah. At the age of 80, one takes these little blips in life a little differently, and I thought, even if I miss the entire program, that's just what's going to be.
Yeah,
But
well, just
you've had the worst
time.
luck. You've had the worst luck of all because here I am anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Well, happy birthday. And,
Thank
I
you.
look at birthdays to be like the beginning of a whole new year. It's a clean slate. You can design it any way you want. And here you are, you know, it's wonderful.
I agree completely about that whole new slate, and it's one of the points I would hope we can make in this program today is that it's the same way with the experience we call death. That death is really something is simply just birth in another manner, in another way. I like to call it reverse birth, but it's not really an end of anything, but it's the beginning of our next step on the eternal journey of the soul. And in my understanding, in my awareness, we do not lose, uh, in the passage called death, we do not lose our sense of self. We do not lose our self identity. We simply know ourselves and experience ourselves in a different way. It's just a
Yeah.
change of address, basically. So but it's still another beginning, and life is just full of beginnings, just like a birthday is the beginning of another year. So
Mhm.
yeah, I agree with everything you've said, and this is an opportunity, for all of us when we reach our birthday to decide what do I want my next year to be about, and what's really
Yeah.
important in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I remember you and I are both on the same track with death. I think death gets in society like a really bum rap. And when my brother-in-law passed, I did a talk at his funeral, and I quoted Casper the Ghost, and I said, Casper the Ghost says, "Birth and death is like birth, only backwards." And I
Is
got a
that right?
chuckle out of everybody, but it's true.
Yeah,
It's
it,
true.
it is. It's a brand new beginning. It's another start, and it's another opportunity as we continue our eternal journey, the eternal journey of the soul, which is a
Yeah.
joyful journey. It's not a burdensome journey. Honestly, without wanting to scare people, but our time here on Earth is the more burdensome aspect of our journey, of our soul's journey. So,
Sure.
so the question is, and you addressed it a minute ago, how to make this time here on Earth um, containing as little burden as possible and as much joy as possible. And there are ways to
Mhm.
do that in my experience. That's why I wrote a book called The God Solution.
I'm really excited to hear about this. And I just want to say for the viewers that because we both had tech issues, we didn't have any preamble prior to going live to for me to say to you, what do you want people to take away? And I usually ask that question so we can have a nice dialogue, that's not contrived with a bunch of questions, and just, maneuver toward that outcome for the viewers. So let me just ask you, what would you like people to take away from our conversation today?
This is going to be a very unorthodox answer, and it may even seem just a tiny bit impolite. I don't mean it to sound impolite, but I might kind of, scare off a few viewers. But honestly, I don't care. I don't have an outcome in mind. I want I guess I would answer the question directly by saying I want each person to take whatever they get out of it. And there will be two people who say, yeah, I didn't get anything out of that. There'll be three people who will say, that was kind of mildly interesting. There'll be two people who will say, what a great interview. And there will be a producer who produces your program who will say, never have this guy on the program again for the rest of your life. But so I'm
Highly doubtful, but
I'm just going to offer. I've got kind of a strange sense of humor, I've been told. Yeah, I'm going to offer what I have come to understand about this process called life, both through my conversations with God, as well as, frankly, through my 80 years here on the planet. And then people will take from it whatever they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, speaking of conversations with God, this is like full circle for me, because that's when I discovered you, and I pretty much inhaled that trilogy. It was such, as usual, wonderful timing in my life. I'd been on, whatever you want to call it, I hate labels, but just for sake of conversation, I've been on some kind of a spiritual awakening kind of journey for about maybe 10 years when I came across you and your books. And there was so much there for me, from the notion that you just, when you sat to write, it came through you instead of something you had to research and, the logical linear mind, right?
Yeah. No research. That's no. Yeah. Let me begin by sharing this with people who are watching. I didn't sit down to write a book called Conversations with God. That's not how it
Right.
happened. And so, of course, there was no such thing as research. None of the ideas, none of the messages in the Conversations with God books came from my mind. I simply took dictation. Not only was there no research, there was not even any idea what the next sentence was going to be. And I did not sit down to write a book. Deborah, I was having a very private, personal, spiritual experience that I never dreamt in a million years that anyone else would ever be privy to. I wasn't going to share it with anybody. I was simply having a middle of the night encounter with my idea of God. Just to set the stage so people really understand. I was going through a very tough period in my life. We all have those periods, and I was going through mine, the toughest moment of my life. And I woke up at 4:23 one morning, and I said to myself, I'm living by myself in a little apartment on top of a garage, which is all I could afford. And I was saying to God, okay, all right. And I wrote an angry letter to God. There was a little tablet on my coffee table, and I wrote an angry letter. Dear God, what does it take to make life work? I was furious. It's 4:23 in the morning, and I'm writing this letter. What have I done to deserve a life of such continuing struggle? And then I remember vividly writing the following sentence. Tell me the rules. Just tell me the rules. I'll play the game. Just tell me the rules. And after you do, don't change them, because my experience has been that the rules of life were changing every other day.
Yeah.
So I'm just writing this letter, to nobody in particular, to God, just to get it off my chest. But then I heard a voice in my head, so real, Deborah, that I would have sworn for a moment that there was somebody behind me. I turned around, there's nobody there. And I said, oh, great. Not only am I having the worst period of time in my life, I'm now going out of my mind.
Hearing voices?
Yeah, because I'm hearing this voice, and the voice in my mind simply said, Neil, sweetheart, do you really want answers to all of these questions? or are you just venting?
Wow.
And I remember thinking, well, hello, do you think I am venting? But if you've got answers, I'd sure as hell like to know
Yeah.
what they are.
Bring it on. Right.
And God said, you are sure as hell about a lot of things, but wouldn't you rather be sure as heaven? And I'm writing, all right, what's that supposed to mean? And then I get answers to every question I asked and questions I never dreamt existed. And I find myself caught up in this dialogue on paper, question, answer, question,
Amazing.
answer, question, answer. Again, and the answers I'm getting are answers I never dreamt existed, answers I
Yeah.
never even thought of. They're coming out of, God knows where. And I mean that literally. God only knows where. And
Mhm.
so the answers are coming to me and I'm writing them down faithfully, literally taking dictation. And finally, somewhere in the middle of this on paper dialogue, I'm told, you will make of this one day a book and it will be
Wow.
accessed and it will be accessed by many people. And I thought to myself, ha, ha, now I gotcha. You, I mean, nobody's going to, but come on. But I said, thanks for that statement because now I can prove either this is just my imagination because nobody's going to publish a book. I can imagine the publisher, if I would send it to some publishing house, I can imagine the publisher going out to the workroom floor and saying to his staff, to his editors, hold the presses, stop everything. I got a guy here who's talking to God. It's not going to happen. I knew it wasn't going to happen. It's just one in a million. No way in the world are they going to. So I sent my handwritten notes to a small publishing house on the East Coast of the United States on a dare, just daring God. Okay, you say it's going to turn into a book? I dare you. Prove it. Prove it. Do you know that small publishing house? Their owner called me about 2 weeks later. Of course, I put my telephone number on the notes, and he called me. He said, "We'd like to publish this." I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "No, we think this is fascinating stuff. You're asking all the questions that the average person would ask about everything:
Yeah.
life, work, diet, health, parenting, sexuality, romance, relationships, career, illness. You've asked all the questions." I said, "Well, yeah, but if I didn't think you'd," I mean, he said, "No, we would like to publish it. We can't give you an advance because, but we will share some royalties with you." And I thought to myself, well, great. Who would believe it? They actually put the book out. And I thought, it's not going to sell 500 copies. Come on. Who's going to go out and buy a book by a guy who claims he's talking directly to God? It's not going to happen. And I was right. I mean, I was right on the money. The book did not sell 500 copies,
Amazing.
sold 5 million
Yeah.
in 37 languages. Not bragging, just saying.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, what is going on? And then, of course, they called me from New York because a large publishing house in New York, Putnam, the Putnam Publishing Company, bought the book from this small publisher on the East
Sure.
Coast and paid them, a ridiculous amount of money. And then Putnam took over the book and called me and said, "Do you have any sisters like that at home?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I said, well, of course, I'm continuing to have the experience. And they said in New York, send us whatever you got. So I did.
Wow.
And that wound up becoming what people now know as book 2 and book 3
Yeah.
in the Conversations with God dialogue series. And then I realized, again, I don't want people to think I'm bragging about this because I'm not. I'm just explaining what happened. But Deborah, then I realized, there's more going on here than meets the eye.
Yes, indeed.
This was never intended to be simply for this little guy sitting here in southern Oregon. This was clearly intended for large numbers of people
For the
all over
world.
the world in
Yeah.
37 languages. So I continued to allow myself to have the experience. I continued to take the dictation and I continued to share it with others through the publishing houses who found it fascinating to put these dialogues into print. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's not bragging if it's true. So you're good there. There's something that stood out to me, and I think it was in book 3 that really helped me in so many ways, because I was pretty shut down. You know, there was someone in me that really wanted to like come out and be more expressive and share my message with the world, but was terrified of criticism or, you know, whatever. And there was a statement in there that said, tell the truth. Tell the truth about yourself to yourself, tell the truth. And I could be butchering this, but tell the truth about yourself to others, and tell the truth about others to others. And I was just like, yeah, you know, because I grew up in an environment where everything was swept under the carpet.
Absolutely, absolutely. Don't you know? Not we don't talk about God or politics in polite company,
Yeah, or
and you don't say
money.
this. You're not supposed to say that exactly. So everyone is walking around holding everything in. Yeah, those are
Yeah,
5 levels of truth telling. You know, before we get into that, let me just stop for 1 minute, if I
sure.
may, Deborah, and share this with our audience. I don't want
Mhm.
people to think that I'm imagining that I'm the only one who's having or who has had this kind of
Sure.
experience. One of the most important messages that I received in my conversations with God, because of course, you have to understand, I wrote very early in the experience, why me? Why am I
Mm.
having this experience? And God said, sweetheart, it's not just you. Please don't put yourself in that position where you think, it's just Neil having conversations with God. God said, I talk to everybody, all the time. The question isn't, to whom am I talking? The question is, who's listening? Because of the turning point in your life that you've taken, you have just simply decided to listen and go beyond listening. You've actually taken down in handwriting everything that I'm saying to you, a step that most people don't take. So, what I've discovered is that everyone is having a conversation with God throughout their lives. They're simply calling it something else, you know,
Yeah.
because they don't want to be marginalized or ridiculed. Nobody's going to walk down the street and say, "Yeah, you know, God told me this," or "I had a conversation with God, who told me that." So we call it, women's intuition, or a sudden
Mm.
insight, or an epiphany, or whatever we want to use to get away with describing to someone else that a thought or an idea came to us as clear as a bell out of nowhere, and we can't really describe where it came from. So we call it women's intuition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So or a psychic hit. I had a psychic
Yeah.
hit. So we have different names for the same experience. I simply called it exactly what I was experiencing. Simply called it a conversation with God. So thank you for letting me just make that clear. So I wanted everyone to know that I'm not sitting here imagining that I'm the one who's been chosen, that we're
Yeah, I
all
got
having
you.
the same experience. We're simply calling it something else.
Yeah, absolutely. So this how shall we say, taking of dictation, is this how you've written the remaining books? I think
Yes,
you've
ma'am. Yes.
published 39 books so
Yes,
far.
ma'am. Yeah, it truly is. I will wake up in the morning and I'll have an idea. Like I wrote a book called When Everything Changes, Change Everything. I wrote another book that I really love, honestly, called The Only Thing That Matters. And I woke up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and my wife said, "What's the matter? What's going on? Are you okay?" I said, "No, I'm fine. I'm just getting an inspiration here." She said, "Oh boy, another
Here we
inspiration."
go.
Yeah, here we go. What does that mean? My wife has learned that when I go down to my writing room, I have a little room in the house. We turned one of our 3 bedrooms into my little enclave, my little man cave, if you will,
Mhm.
right? And everyone understands you don't go into Neil's man cave and maybe slip him a sandwich or a bowl of soup, and that's about it. So my wife knew that when I went down to that room, I needed to be left alone. But when I came out later that day, but early in the morning, around 9 or 10 o'clock, she said, well, "What's up? What's happening?" I said, I woke up with a title in my mind called God's Message to the World. The
Mm.
only thing that matters. And I was only given one sentence. I woke up with one sentence in my mind. I want to share this with you. The sentence was, 98% of the world's people are spending 98% of their time on things that don't matter. So my wife said to me, wow,
I
well,
felt
then
that.
what does matter? What is it? I said, I don't know. I'll let you know when it comes to me. I don't.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So, to answer I'm saying, I'm giving you this information in answer to your question. Yes, all the books have been written that way. And when I sat down to write the book called The Only Thing That Matters, I had no idea what the only thing that matters was
Yeah.
until it was given to me. So it wasn't a dialogue book, question and answer, but it was a book that how would I put it, brought through. And then I said to God at one point in my conversations, how do I know this isn't all not just my imagination? And she said, Neil, why wouldn't I use your imagination? I would use every tool at my disposal to get through to you. Where do you suppose Mozart's music came from? Where do you
Oh,
suppose Michelangelo's art came from? Came from their
sure.
imagination. They made it all up out of thin air. It came from their imagination. So do not decide that because it's coming from your imagination that it's not valid or has no value. Just give yourself permission to step into the experience you're having. So the result is yes, I've produced, I mean, who would imagine, but 39 books.
It's amazing.
God's message
So
to the world, the only thing that matters, when everything changes, change everything, and a slew of others that people have found some value in.
absolutely, when you think about imagination, it's really all we have as human beings to create with. It's
Exactly.
right, everything like from this technology that we struggled with to the clothes we're wearing to the house we live in to the car we drive. It's all come initially from someone's imagination, and then it's evolved and it's been innovative. But even the innovation of something that has, say, become archaic and it's birthed into a new version is also imagination.
It's totally imagination, and it's not always as dependable or reliable as we'd like it to be. For instance, just to give you an example, on my computer, on my home computer that I'm on right now, we have built in, my staff and I have built in a beauty limitation. I mean, the computer crashes when it reaches past the beauty limitation, and I keep getting a warning on my screen right now: beauty limitation approaching, beauty limitation approaching. Get Deborah off the screen. Too much beauty, too much
Oh,
beauty, too much
geez.
beauty.
I was going to say, like, what's a beauty invitation? You're
So
funny.
so I'm reaching the beauty limitation. So
You're hilarious. Oh my gosh. So, how does this all play into? Because I want to talk about two things. One, I want to talk about just the whole direction of that. All of us, each of us, have the capacity to have this conversation with God. And then I want to get into the pure love part and praying from a space of pure love rather than need, desperation, and that all comes together. There's a common denominator for that, I think, and in my observation, and that is that we've been taught that we're separate from God
yeah,
and that we need an intermediary to talk to God on our behalf.
and
Um,
God will certainly not talk back to us. Everybody agrees we can.
right.
If there is a God, and the 8 out of 10 people, by the way, are worldwide. They've taken surveys. 8 out of 10 people across the planet agree that there is some kind of higher power. We don't know exactly how to define it or what to call it,
Mhm.
but we agree there's something, a higher power. There's, as I said earlier, there's more going on here than meets the eye, but we don't know how to interact with it or how to use that higher power. But yes, yeah. So here we are now confronted with this fact that we have that higher power, and we're not quite clear in how to use it or what to do with it, or where we go from here. But there's more going on here than meets the eye, and that's what I've come to really understand. That we are
Yeah.
part of a larger process. Our species is part of a larger process that's going on all over the universe. It's called
Mhm.
evolution. And the human species is evolving to its next level, as have every species of sentient beings in the cosmos. And so right now we're in the middle of our own evolutionary process. Frankly, on the beginning side of it, We're on our own 20-yard line. We're not close to a touchdown here, to use a sports term. We're deep in our own territory, but we are now beginning to make some advances, and some rapid advances, as we move forward toward the place that people call self-realization. And that's really what's going on here, in my understanding, Deborah. We're finally starting to really self-realize. That is, to realize who the self is and what's going on here, and why are we here after all. There's a question that most people have not asked themselves in their lifetime. I know I didn't ask myself the question until I turned 50 years old. And many people go their entire lives without asking this particular question. I mean, in a serious way. But the question is, who am I? I mean, really, who am I? Is this who I am? Am I simply a body?
Right.
A life form? Like a bird in the sky or a fish in the sea? Just
going
another,
through the motions.
Yeah, another biological life form, more sophisticated perhaps, fair enough, but is that basically who I am? Or am I really this? Am I my mind, with a body, and this is who I am? And so what I asked God was that same question, who am I? And God said, you're neither this, nor are you this. These are things you have. These are not things that you are. Neil, who you are is a spiritual being. Let's use the word that your society has come up with. You're a soul. You are a soul with a body and with a mind. But these are simply tools, pieces of equipment that you're using while you're in the realm of the physical in order for you to complete the agenda of the soul. Which, of course, made me ask, okay, God, then what's the agenda of the soul?
Mm-hmm.
And God said, the agenda of the soul is the same for every sentient being in the cosmos. In fact, self-realization. That is for you to not only know, but to experience who you really are. I said, well, what's the difference between knowing and experiencing, the way you're using those terms? And God said, Neil, let's use a simple example. Let's just use a metaphor. Pretend that you're the light. Now, I don't want to get into all kinds of saintly stuff, I am the light. But let's just use a simple example. Let's pretend that you decided that you are the light. So now you know that you're the light. But if you want to experience that you are the light, not just know it, but actually have a direct experience of being the light, by expressing the light through you as you, what would you need? I said, I don't know. What are you getting at? I don't understand. What are you asking? God said, Neil, in order for you to experience yourself, expressing yourself as the light, you would have to place yourself in the darkness.
Ouch.
Otherwise, you would just be a candle in the sun. You'd be there all right with a billion, cajillion other candles, but you wouldn't be able to know yourself. You'd have to separate yourself from all the other candles and put yourself in a place where there's nothing but darkness. I've just explained to you, God said to me, Neil, in simplistic terms, what you're doing in the realm of the physical. Therefore, when you do encounter the one last sentence, if I may, to just wrap it up. Therefore, God said to me, when you encounter the darkness, raise not your fist to heaven and curse the darkness not, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are. And that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. Move through the world with that understanding, and you will change your life. And if you're not careful, you'll start changing the world.
Yeah, I felt that. It's so what you're saying is it's in the contrast that we really connect.
Precisely.
To God. Yeah.
And in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not experienceable. In the absence of tall, short is not experienceable. In the absence of big, small is not experienceable. In the absence of the darkness, being the light is not experienceable. So you will discover, this is called, by the way, the law of opposites, which was given to us in the Conversations with God books. So when the opposite appears in your world, bless it, bless it, bless. bless your enemies,
Mm,
and pray for those who persecute you, and do good to those who would do you evil.
yeah, age-old wisdom right there.
I could, of
And
course, be wrong about all of this.
well, I don't think it's about right or wrong. I don't think I think that we live in a world that has made far too much of the polarity of right or wrong. And
Bingo.
so, right? And so when we look at our lives,
Did you hear what she said, folks? We make far too much of right or wrong. I said bingo. She said right.
right? I know it's my autoresponder. Um, yeah, I think that's been my biggest lesson, is to stop judging myself and just look at what I'm experiencing rather than being right or wrong,
Not only
as
look at what you're
simply
experiencing. Please go ahead. I'm
focusing
sorry.
my energy.
Yeah. Not only
Yeah.
to look at what you're experiencing, but to look at why you're experiencing it.
Mm,
See, because life becomes different for us when we start experiencing things on purpose rather than just because it happened that way. And
yeah.
that's why I wrote a book called The God Solution. Because the God solution is to use the mechanics of metaphysics, use the
Mhm.
mechanics of manifestation to begin creating a life where things happen because we choose for them to happen rather than things happen randomly and we're just kind of reacting and responding in the best way we can. Now, no one that I know lives, even spiritual masters, lives a life where every single solitary minute is the result of something they've chosen ahead of time. But I
Sure.
do know that there are spiritual masters who have walked the planet and who are now walking the planet, for whom life has been largely a series of events that they have called forth through the
Mhm.
process of manifestation. I mean, and I'm not
Yeah.
even talking about ancient masters like Jesus or Moses or Muhammad, bless his holy name, or Catherine of Genoa or Julian of Norwich or the blessed Mary, Mother Mary. I'm talking about even some contemporary people living today. Thich Nhat Hanh, who just celebrated his continuation day only recently. Eckhart Tolle, who's still with us, and
Yeah.
Byron Katie, people like that,
Yeah.
who are very, very clear how the process works. Once we get to that place, Deborah, where we start truly, I hate to use a hackneyed phrase, but when they truly start taking control of our own life and producing outcomes that we choose ahead of time, now the whole process begins to make sense. And as I begged God 30 years ago, tell me the rules. Just tell me the rules and
Helpful.
I'll
Yeah. I'll just
play.
follow them. Yeah.
Yeah, just give me the rule book. And so God gave me the rule book. And I included those rules in the book that I titled The God Solution. And I want people to think I'm not up here trying to push my latest book. Guys, can I talk to you directly? I've already sold 15 million books. I'm not trying to sell 25 more. So I'm not,
Right.
just so you know, I'm not trying to get people to jump on the latest book. But I just want you to know what's in there. What's in the book called The God Solution, the last 4 or 5 chapters, a short course on the process of manifestation, how we
Mhm.
can take control of our lives in a way that actually works.
I just had to take that in. I think that I feel is a better word. So when I was a little girl, I used to sit on my mother's bed and stare into the mirror on her dressing table and talk to God. And then some things happened in my world, in my life, in my family dynamic that were, really trauma based. And I lost that somewhere along the way. But then it started to emerge in me a little bit later, and it wouldn't leave me alone. And so thankfully, so, you know, along the way, I just started to surrender to what was coming through. And I think that's what I found so magnetic about conversations with God, because it supported me in that surrender to those messages that were coming through. And the biggest healing that took place for me, which is a great segue, was into love, you know, rather than this constant pressurized right or wrong, good or bad, you know, the polarity that keeps us stuck, and to actually just that surrender to that pure love. And at times it was, I fought it, you know, I fought it like mad. And I started to notice that when I fought that off, I didn't feel well physically. And I had less tolerance for certain foods and beverages. And that was a guidance too, because I made a decision to quit sugar and to quit alcohol and just the things that would throw my centeredness, my groundedness, my connectedness into a tailspin and, you know, create some depressive, negative thinking. So I really think the answer here, with everything we're going through in the world, is really pure love. And so what can people do that's, you know, simplistic, that they could just on a daily basis connect to that and have it infiltrate their thoughts and their emotions and their lives and their
Well,
habits?
first of all, Deborah, I think we have to really define what pure love is. Let me
Mhm.
share with our audience here today that the book, The God Solution, talks about this exact subject. It says, you know, that the first thing we need to do is redefine who we think God, who and what we think that God is.
Mm.
It may be true that 8 out of 10 people in the world believe in a higher power, but we can't get a universal agreement on what that higher power is and what to call it. So what we're offering in the God Solution is a definition, a brand new definition of God. Let's just say that God is pure love. Now, sometimes when I say this to an audience, you know, a live audience, somebody in the back of the room will get up and say, "Oh, Neil. Well, I've been listening to you for 20 minutes for you to come here and tell me the big revelation is that God is love. We all know that God is love. Come on." And I have to say, whoa, relax. I didn't say God is love. I said God is pure love.
Mm.
Now, my friend in the back of the room will say, "All right, okay, what's the difference?" The difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return.
Mm.
Not obedience, not worship, not compliance, and not even love in return. But
Wow.
pure love requires nothing in return because pure love, that is the sender and the giver of pure love, understands that the greatest joy, the greatest blessing in life is experienced through the projection of that energy, through
Mhm.
the
Sure.
being of that energy and the projection of that energy. And that's the way that God loves us. Now, why does that matter on earth? Okay, it's a nice theological idea. You know, it may be, by the way, a direct contrast to what virtually every one of the world's 4,000 religions teaches, because most of the world's religions teach us, at least at some level, that God is loving for sure. Yeah, like the guy in the audience said, yeah, God is love. But God is also judgmental, condemning, and punishing if you don't do what God wants. Now, here's a theological theory that says there's nothing that God wants because there's nothing that God needs, least of
Mm.
all from the likes of us, any more than you need anything from your 2-year-old child. I mean, anything in particular. You love the child, but you don't require a 16-month-old baby to somehow
Sure.
provide you with something that you think you need from the child. You let the child simply grow into itself and express itself the way it's going to. You give it guidance along the way, but you are not requiring the child, at least hopefully, you're not requiring the child to meet your own needs. That's called pure love. And that's how
Mm.
God loves us. Now, we can't even love the person on the pillow next to us that way. We can't even, we have not yet learned
I know.
how, how to say to that other person, you know what? I love you so much. And I honestly don't need you to return it to me in any particular way, to act in any particular way, to respond in any particular way. to meet my needs in any particular way. Because if I'm using my love for you to get your love to come back to me, then I'm not loving you at all. I'm simply loving me through you and
Yeah.
using you as a way to love myself. But God doesn't love us that way. God doesn't need us to supply God with whatever we think that God requires us to do. Let me tell you a little story about that if I can.
Sure.
When I was 9 years old, I was told that God required us to go to church.
Yeah.
I was raised a Catholic, and the priest comes into our third grade class teaching us about mortal sin. And I raised my little 9-year-old hand, Father, what's a mortal sin? Can you give me an example? Because I thought he was going to say, sure, murdering someone or stealing someone's life savings, or child abuse or whatever it might be. No, he comes up with missing mass on Sunday. I
Oh,
said,
whoa.
what? What? That's a mortal sin? Yeah, God says. The priest said, yes, yeah. You have to, keep the day of the Lord, and if you miss mass on Sunday, it's a mortal sin. If you don't go to confession and don't get a chance to confess your sin and have it forgiven, if you're like you're hit by a car on the way you and die, you'll be sent to hell
Unbelievable.
forever, everlasting damnation because you missed church one Sunday. And so I'm trying to put this together. I'm looking, whoa, wait a minute. So we have been raised, not just me, but billions of people on the earth have been raised to believe in a God who is judgmental, condemning, and punishing, who has a set of rules, wherever they are, the Ten Commandments or whatever you want to call it. There are a lot of different ways that the religions teach us their rules. You have to
Yeah.
wear a certain thing. There's one religion that teaches if you're a female. If you're a male, of course, you can do anything. But if you're a female, you have to be covered from head to toe, and you can only have a small slit in front of your eyes, so at least you can see where you're walking. But no one is ever allowed to see you anything other than, and because this is what God commands, this is what God requires, this is what God demands. And there are many, many other religions as well that have their rules and their limitations. Now, I bring this up for a reason. What does this have to do with our worldly behavior? Because every religion does teach one thing. We should act God-like. That is, we should try to imitate to the best way that we can, imitate the God of our understanding. So if we're imitating God, we're going to be imitating God's behavior. That is, we will allow ourselves to be loving for sure, but also to be judgmental, condemning, and punishing if other
Yeah.
people don't do for us what we have demanded of them. And that's why the world is such a mess. That's why right now, even as we're talking, thousands of people are dying in a country
Wow.
because the two countries can't agree on something as simple as a borderline between the countries. Now it's a fair dispute. It's a fair misunderstanding. It's not a small thing. But do you kill thousands of people because
Right.
of that misunderstanding? Well, we do on this planet. That's what we do
Yeah.
on this planet because on this planet we are judgmental, condemning, and punishing. I promise you, if people don't do what we think they should do.
It's distortion.
But now, if we believe in a God who would never punish us for anything, this is theologically revolutionary. A lot of people are going to be shaking their heads right about now.
I know.
Oh boy,
Blasphemy.
yeah,
Yeah.
trafficking with the devil. But I believe in a God of pure love who says, guys, I love you so much. Do you think I really need you? Do you think that I, the most powerful entity in the universe, need every one of the billions of people on this planet, to say nothing of the cajillions of sentient beings in the universe, and every single one of you is being monitored to make sure that you worship me and obey me and do exactly what I demand, because if you don't, I send you to everlasting damnation. Is that really your understanding of the highest power? Because if it is, no wonder you act with each other the way you do on your planet.
No kidding. No
But if we
kidding.
decide to love the person and start with the person on the next pillow next to you, my gosh, if we can't even love the person with whom we have an intimate relationship and say to them, sweetheart, I love you completely and I need require and demand nothing in return from you. I'm so grateful that my wife and I have exactly that kind of relationship.
Sure. It's
We
a
say
game
that,
changer for the divorce rate, for sure, right?
and it can be a game changer for the entire world. If we can
Yeah.
say to people of other denominations, of other nationalities, of other political persuasions, if we can stop all the alienation between people on this planet simply because they're liberal and I'm conservative, or they're gay and I'm straight, or they're black and I'm white, or they're
Mm.
male and I'm female, or they're rich and I'm poor, or they're Mexican and I'm American, or and we're using the differences between us not as a delightful expression of how many flowers there are in God's garden, but to make people wrong simply because they are different from us. Guys, people, please, please, stop it. Stop it. The main message of Conversations with God is simple. We are all one.
Mm. True. True and sobering and freeing all at the same time.
It's changed my life. I could be wrong about all of this. I
I
don't.
don't think so. I think it goes back to the point I made about this right and wrong polarity that we've been conditioned to live within. You know, you're wrong, I'm right. Or
And that's
even the
what.
war with ourselves, like the right and wrongness of ourselves, the
And that was one of
rejection
the
of
most
our
startling
body.
messages. That was one of the most. Forgive the interruption, but you
Sure.
touched on something. That was one of the most startling messages I received in the first dialogue I had 30 years ago. Neil, there's no such thing as right and wrong.
Mm.
What? What? God said, no, no, no. There's only what works and what does not work, given what it is you're trying to do. And the problem on your planet is your species doesn't know what it's trying to do.
Mm.
You have no idea why you're on the earth, what your agenda is, what is the agenda of the soul. You think what you're trying to do is, get the guy, get the girl, get the car, get the
Money.
job, get the
Hmm.
house, get the spouse, get the kids, get the better car, get the better job, get the better spouse, get the better spouse, get the better spouse.
Yeah.
Get the grandkids, get the cruise tickets,
It's very
get
superficial.
no kidding. And when you've had the experience that I've had living on the sidewalk for a year of your life, which I wound up doing because for a whole reason, a series of events, I wound up living on the street for a year. But when you pick yourself up off the sidewalk after sleeping for a year on the concrete in the rain and the cold, and going from person to person, asking for a quarter or a dime or a dollar, and having the indignity of having to try to find a place in the world that you can relieve yourself without the manager of the place throwing you out because you look and smell terrible. I've been through all those experiences, and not for a bad week or a bad month, but for a year of my life. I spent a year of my
Incredible.
life living on the sidewalk. Once you have an experience like that, I promise you, you wake up in the morning with great clarity about what's important, what really matters in life, and what doesn't matter at all. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being loved or not loving. It's about expressing pure love. And my experience has been that when we use life to express pure love to everyone, including those we would call our enemies,
Right.
including those with whom,
Especially.
especially,
Mhm.
including those with whom we would disagree, that's called the God solution. And that's why I was prompted to write a book called The God Solution, which finally answers the question, if there really is a God, why doesn't she just step in? Why doesn't he just solve the problems? Why doesn't he intervene? Why does God allow the world to be the mess that it is? And the answer is no, guys, you don't understand. God's intention, God's desire is not to create minions, a kingdom in which all we have to do is
Right.
obey the God, and then we'll get whatever we want. That's not God's desire was to create a civilization here and elsewhere in the cosmos, on every planet in the universe. By the way, we now have a universe of universes, It's another whole story. But God's intention was not to create minions, but to create millions of people who each had the ability to produce their own reality, that each person could experience themselves as an aspect and an individuation of divinity. And right about this time, right about at this point in a lecture, somebody gets up and says, "Oh, Neil, are you trying to tell us we're all God? Come on." And I have to say to them, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say we're all God. I did say we are all individuations of divinity.
Yeah.
Our relationship to God is the same as the wave to the ocean. The wave is not something other than the ocean. It's not separate from the ocean. It's an arising of the ocean in individual form, beautiful, powerful, extraordinary. And when that expression is complete, the wave recedes back into the ocean whence it came. That's a simple metaphor that helps us understand who we are in relationship to the highest power in the cosmos that some people call God. When you have 8 out of 10 people believing in God, but disagreeing on what it is that God is and who and what God wants,
Yes.
these kinds of conversations start to become very important.
They do. They do. It's probably the most important conversation of all. And I like to believe that we've arrived here at this point in time in history where more of those conversations are being had.
Not only are they being had, but they're being shared with more and more people because of miracles of technology like this. Even 20 years ago, who would have thought that you and I could talk to each other, much less have thousands of people watching us talk to each other across the miles that we were now doing? So we live in an age of technology that's allowing us to share this information finally, at last, in a productive, powerful way. So that's why I appreciate you allowing me to join you here on this program. And I honor you for the work that you're doing in helping people to come to these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. And I'm so disappointed that we've come to the end. There's a healing taking place. I feel it every day, and it is because of these kinds of conversations and them being shared. People no longer being afraid to express themselves in an authentic way and to share, just the loving being that they are, whether it's received or not. You never know what seed that plants in another human being and how that blossoms along the way. So as much as one could look at the world and say it's getting worse, I believe it's getting better. I believe that darkness can never exist in the light. And so just keep shining and just keep being that space of love with yourself and with others, obviously.
I'm right with you, pal. And I appreciate all that you're doing. And never think, by the way, that, well, what can one person do? I want to leave with that note. Many people talk to me and they say, yeah, but it's all very well and good, but what can one person do? It's one person that has changed the world. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Gloria Steinem. I can give you a list of hundreds of people who've decided, you know what, I'm going to do my own bit. I'm going to play my own part.
My way.
Yeah, I'm going to offer my gift, and my gift is enough. And you never know when your gift could change the world in a way you couldn't even have begun to imagine. So thank you, Deborah, for giving your gift and making it possible for us to receive it.
Well, thank you. I got this. You talk about voices in your head from God. I got this one day. It just came to me, to reach out to you and invite you on my show. And I had no idea if you'd say yes or not. I mean, you're a majorly accomplished author that has done just so much with your life. And thank you for being willing to come on my humble show and to share this. I feel that it's going to touch the hearts of many, many people for a very long time.
I hope so, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. And Let's do it again sometime. This doesn't have to be the beginning and the end.
Yes.
We can
Will
do
you
it
come
again.
back? Okay, good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm so glad you said that because it was on my mind. We're totally in sync. Both of us shut down our computers at the same time, and it's so good. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, Neil Donald Walsh, 39 books. I mean, it's not impossible in any way to tap into this knowledge and information. So again, I appreciate you guys. Remember to subscribe, like, share, comment. It really helps me grow the channel, and it makes such a massive difference. And God bless you all. And just remember, stay aligned, stay alert, and stay awake.